Sabali, who doubles as the Minister for Presidential Affairs, has delivered a statement on the United States of America's hostile actions against the Gambia since 1994. Here is an excerpt.
Hereby reminded of the British and U.S. government's various attempts to have this current government overthrown since 1994, when the great July 22, 1994 revolution definitively and truly asserted Gambia's independence from their colonialist and neo-colonialist hegemony, thereby ending all their hopes of exploiting our natural resources to the detriment of the Gambia. The first was the U.S. and UK-sponsored coup attempt on November 11, 1995, led by the then Army Commander Lieutenant Barrow. All those coup plotters that escaped by going to the U.S. and Senegalese embassies, including Bakary Bunjadabo, a former vice president under the PPP regime, and a dismissed finance minister under the AFPRC, who escaped the jurisdiction by riding in the official flag car of the then Senegalese ambassador to the Gambia, Mr. Mukhtar Kebe, were issued U.S. and British visas by their respective embassies in Dakar and given asylum in the U.S. and Bibi Dabo in the U.K. Since that coup plot failed, up till today, these two Western powers have continued in their relentless efforts to destabilize this country, desperately using every means possible, from sponsoring coup plots to financing the opposition and mounting a vigorous smear campaign consisting of outrageous lies and false allegations against the Gambia.
The Secretary General and Head of Civil Service and Minister for Presidential Affairs, they are delivering a statement. The statement will broadcast in entirety immediately after this newscast. The National Disaster Management Agency is hosting an international conference devoted to finding means of incorporating adaptation and disaster risk reduction into overall economic and social planning processes. The multi-year initiative has attracted participants from ECOWAS and non-ECOWAS countries. Roy Bite has the details.
Mainstreaming adaptation and disaster reduction into development, known as Madrid, is a multi-year initiative designed to increase social demand and political commitment for integrating disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation into the overall economic and social planning processes. Madrid also seeks to promote the establishment of sustained human resources capacity development for the implementation of development planning that integrates risk reduction concepts and ideas. It is in this drive that stakeholders in the disaster community within the region through the National Disaster Management Agency gathered for a 4-day seminar with the hope of finding solutions in relation to disaster mitigation.
This program, I am told, is designed to develop capacities for improving advocacy and access to guidance, material, and technical resources on mainstreaming disaster and climate risk management into development. By engaging with key decision makers and diverse national champions through a series of cumulative leadership development forums such as this one, it aims to facilitate learning, sharing of experience, and building alliances.
Several countries, among them the Gambia, have incorporated disaster risk reduction, mainstreaming, and the Madrid activities in their 2013 management work plans. This, as Dr. Cherno Omar Bari explained, helps the country in its disaster mitigation efforts.
Disaster management occupies center stage in our development endeavors, and this culminated into the setting up of the National Disaster Management Agency. It is necessary to set up this agency so that our impressive development gains are not eroded by natural and human-induced calamities.
Victoria Ginger, the World Food Programme Country Director, in her opening remarks on behalf of the United Nations Resident Representative and the UNDP, outlined significant steps that stakeholders need to put into consideration in trying to mainstream disaster. According to her, development efforts in Africa are increasingly at risk from the devastating impacts of natural hazard, predominantly droughts and floods.
Why does the national policy discourse often stop at enhancing preparedness for response to disasters instead of preventing damages and losses from occurring in the first place? Those are questions that we have to put to ourselves. The challenge lies clearly in being able to find the right balance between, on the one side, the immediate rewards from responding to humanitarian needs, and on the other side, making responsible investments in risk reduction and adaptation that may only pay off after 10 or more years.
Many are confident that by the end of this seminar, the participants will come up with requisite skills relevant to mainstreaming disaster risk reduction and climate change into development. Rohi Bitey, Grts News.
We'll be back with news from outside the Gambia after this break. Welcome back. In the waters of Italian island of Lampedusa, crews found dozens more bodies over the weekend after a migrant boat caught fire and sank last week. 194 bodies have been recovered so far. More than 500 African asylum seekers were on board. The Italian Coast Guard is defending itself amid criticism that it took too long to respond. Meanwhile, dozens of survivors are housed in a detention center in Lampedusa. CNN senior international correspondent Mauti Chance had exclusive access and spoke to them about their ordeal.
They're the only survivors of Italy's worst migrant shipwreck. 155 African refugees, mainly from Eritrea, now in this overcrowded immigrant detention center. There were some 500 people believed to be on board. According to aid workers, they're too distraught, too shocked to talk. But we found 3 survivors willing to recount their harrowing ordeal. 30-year-old Gamani Nagasi tells me he'll never forget what he saw.
For 5 hours we were floating, using the dead bodies of our companions. There is nothing worse than this. There were many children. There was a mother with her 4 children, a mother with an infant, all lost at sea. My mind is scarred and in a terrible condition.
The traumatic first-hand accounts are helping build a picture of why this boat ended up on the seabed, with most of its passengers entombed below deck. There's been criticism more was not done to help, criticism repeated by the survivors. Hamid Mohammed, in the middle, is just 18. He swears to me an Italian vessel spotted them in trouble off the coast, but did nothing.
The Italians' boat started circling around us. They circled our boat twice, then just went away. That's when people started to panic. The captain said we needed to start a fire. He gathered some clothes and bed sheets and lit them. But his container of benzene exploded. People were screaming as the boat capsized.
The lucky few were eventually rescued by Italian fishermen and the Coast Guard. The authorities have been criticised for filming this instead of saving more. 23-year-old survivor Abrahali Amari told me his dreams of a better life in Europe have been shattered.
We left our country because of hardship, so that we could live in peace and help our families. But we have found this bitter sadness. It was so unexpected and so disturbing, and now we can't think of anything else.
At the port, recovery teams are filling trucks with the bodies they're still pulling from the sea. As the human cost of this ill-fated voyage is literally still being counted. Matthew Chance, CNN, Lampedusa.
Egypt state media say at least 51 people were killed in Sunday's violence and more than 260 were injured. The Muslim Brotherhood says peaceful protesters were killed. CNN's Raza Saya was on the streets of Cairo and he prepared this report.
The day began peacefully, but quickly devolved into dueling demonstrations, ending with violent beatings and deadly clashes that put into sharp focus a nation deeply divided. On one side, supporters of the military-backed interim government who despise the Muslim Brotherhood.
They are terrorists. They are proving this every day.
On the other side, Brotherhood supporters, beaten and battered, but determined to keep their movement alive.
I will fight for this.
About mid-morning, thousands of government